Further moving ahead in chapter 4 human development, now we will discuss about challenges of adolescence. First of all, the term adolescence derived from the Latin word adolescere, meaning to grow into maturity. It is the transitional period in a person's life between childhood and adulthood. Adolescence is commonly defined as the stage of life that begins at the onset of puberty, when sexual maturity or the ability to reproduce is attained. It has been regarded as a period of rapid change, both biologically and psychologically. Though the physical changes that take place during this stage are universal, the social and psychological dimensions of the adolescent's experiences depend on the cultural context. For example, in cultures where the adolescent years are viewed as problematic or confusing, the adolescent will have very different experiences from someone who is in a culture where adolescent years are viewed as beginning of adult behavior and therefore undertaking responsible tasks. Although most societies have at least a brief period of adolescence, it is not universal across cultures. Now discussing about physical development under challenges of adolescence. So puberty or sexual maturity marks the end of childhood. Puberty or sexual maturity marks the end of childhood and signifies the beginning of adolescence, which is characterized by dramatic physical changes in both growth rate and sexual characteristics. However, puberty is not a sudden event but is part of a gradual process. The hormones released during puberty result in the development of primary and secondary sexual characteristics. The primary sex characteristics include those directly related to reproduction, and the secondary sex characteristics include features or signs of achieving sexual maturity. Pubertal changes in boys are marked by acceleration in growth, facial hair, and changes in boys. In girls, rapid growth in height usually begins about 2 years before menarche, the onset of menstruation. The growth spurt generally begins at the age of 12 or 13 for boys and at the age of 10 or 11 for girls. It is normal to have variations in the pubertal sequence. For example, among two boys or two girls of same chronological age, one may complete pubertal sequence before the other has begun it. Both genetics and environment play a part in this. For example, identical twins reach menarche closer in time than do fraternal twins on an average. Girls from affluent families go through menarche earlier than girls from poor families, and historical trends show that the age of menarche is declining in industrialized nations, reflecting better nutrition and advances in medical care. Physical development during adolescence is also accompanied by a number of psychological changes. Around puberty, adolescents show an increase in interest in members of the opposite sex and in sexual matters, and a new awareness of sexual feelings develops. This increased attention to sexuality is caused by factors such as individuals' awareness of the biological changes taking place and the emphasis placed on sexuality by peers, parents, and society. Even then, many adolescents lack adequate knowledge or have misconceptions about sex and sexuality. Sex is a topic parents find difficult to discuss with children. So, adolescents tend to become secretive about sexual concerns, which make exchange of information and communication difficult. The concern over adolescent sexuality has become intense in recent times because of the risk of AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. The development of a sexual identity defines the sexual orientation and guides sexual behavior. As such, it becomes an important developmental task for adolescents. How did you think of yourself at the beginning of puberty? Many adolescents are preoccupied with what they are like and develop individual images of what they look like. Another important developmental task during adolescence is accepting one's physical self maturity. Adolescents need to develop a realistic image of their physical appearance, which is acceptable to them. It is important to keep in mind that puberty also involves cognitive and social changes along with physical changes. Cognitive developmental changes. So, adolescence thought becomes more abstract, logical, and idealistic. They become more capable of examining their own thoughts, others' thoughts, and what others are thinking about them. Adolescents developing ability to reason gives them a new level of cognitive and social awareness. Piaget believed that formal operational thought appears between the age of 11 and 15. During this stage, adolescent thinking expands beyond actual concrete experiences and they begin to think more in abstract terms and reason about them. In addition to being abstract, adolescent thought is also idealistic. Adolescents begin to think about ideal characteristics for themselves and others and compare themselves and others with these ideal standards. For example, they may think what an ideal parent is like and compare their parents with these ideal standards. This may at times make adolescents wonder which of the newfound ideal standards they should adopt. In contrast to trial and error approach used by children in earlier stages of development, adolescent thinking becomes more systematic in solving problems. They think of possible courses of action, why something is happening the way it is, and systematically seek solutions. Piaget called this type of logical thinking hypothetical deductive reasoning. Logical thought also influences the development of moral reasoning. Social rules are not considered as absolute standards, and moral thinking shows some flexibility. The adolescent recognizes alternative moral courses, explores options, and then decides on a personal moral code. For example, should I smoke as everyone I know does? Is it ethical to copy answers in the examinations? This also lends the possibility of adolescents not following society's norms if they conflict with personal code of ethics. For example, individuals at this age might participate in a protest march for a cause rather than adhere or conform to college norm. Adolescents also develop a special kind of egocentrism. According to David Elkind, According to David Elkind, imaginary audience and personal fable are two components of adolescence egocentrism. Imaginary audiences adolescents believe that others are as preoccupied. Imaginary audiences adolescents believe that others are as preoccupied with them as they are about themselves. They imagine that people are always noticing them and are observing each and every behavior of theirs. Imagine a boy who thinks that all will notice the ink spot on his shirt, or a girl with a pimple feels all people would think how bad her skin is. It is this imaginary audience which makes them extremely self conscious. The personal fable is part of the adolescent's egocentrism that involves their sense of uniqueness. Adolescents' sense of uniqueness makes them think that no one understands them or their feelings. For example, an adolescent girl thinks that none can sense the hurt that she feels because of being betrayed by a friend. It is quite common to hear the adolescents say to the parents, "You don't understand me." To retain their sense of personal uniqueness, they may weave stories filled with fantasy around them to create a world that is away from reality. Personal fables are often part of adolescent diaries, now forming an identity. So, you might sought to find answers such as who am I? Which subject should I study? Do I believe in God? The answers to all these questions involve the quest to define one's sense of self or the search for identity. Identity is who you are and what your values, commitments, and beliefs are. The primary task of adolescent The primary task of adolescence is to establish an identity separate from the parents. During adolescence, our detachment process enables the individual to develop a personalized set of beliefs that are uniquely her or his own. In the process of achieving an identity, the adolescent could experience conflict with parents and within herself or himself. Those adolescents who can cope with the conflicting identities develop a new sense of self. Adolescents who are not able to cope with this identity crisis are confused. This identity confusion, according to Erickson, can lead to individuals isolating themselves from peers and family, or they may lose their identity in the crowd. Adolescents, on one hand, may desire independence but may also be afraid of it and show a great deal of dependence on their parents. Rapid fluctuations between self confidence and insecurity are typical of this stage. Adolescents may at one time complain of being treated like a baby, whereas on other occasions they may seek comfort by depending on their parents. Seeking an identity involves searching for continuity and sameness in oneself, greater responsibility, and trying to get a clear sense of who one is, that is, an identity. The formation of identity during adolescence is influenced by several factors: the cultural background, family and societal values, ethnic background, and socioeconomic status all prevail upon the adolescent's search for a place in society. Family relationships become less important as the adolescent spends more time outside at the home and develops a strong need for peer support and acceptance. Increased interactions with peers provide them with opportunities for refining their social skills and trying out different social behaviors. Peers and parents are dual forces having major influences on adolescents. At times, conflicting situations with parents lead to increased identification with peers. At times, conflicting situations with parents lead to increased identification with peers, but generally, parents and peers serve complementary functions and fulfill different needs of the adolescents. Vocational commitment is another factor influencing adolescent identity formation. The question, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" requires the ability to think about the future and to be able to set realistic and achievable goals. In some cultures, freedom is given to the young people to choose an occupation, whereas in certain other cultures, the option of making this choice is not given to the children. Here, parents' decision is likely to be accepted by the children. What has been your experience while making a choice in the selection of subjects? Career counseling in schools offer information regarding appraisal of the students for various courses and jobs and provides guidance in making a decision about career choices. Now, some major concerns for the adolescents are as adults, when we reflect on our adolescent years and recall the conflicts, uncertainties, occasional loneliness, group pressures, we feel it was definitely a vulnerable period. During adolescence, during, during adolescence, peer influence, new gained freedom, unresolved problems may create difficulties for many of us. Conforming to peer pressure can be both positive and negative. Adolescents are often confronted with decisions regarding smoking, drugs, alcohol, and breaking parental rules, etc. These decisions are taken without much regard to the effect they can have. Adolescents may face periods of uncertainty, loneliness, self doubt, anxiety, and concern about themselves and their future. They are also likely to experience excitement, joy, and feelings of competence as they overcome the developmental challenges. Adolescents face major challenges like delinquency, substance abuse, and eating disorders. So, what is delinquency? Delinquency refers to a variety of behaviors ranging from socially unacceptable behavior, legal offenses, to criminal acts. Examples include truancy, running away from home, stealing, or burglary, or acts of vandalism. Adolescents with delinquency and behavioral problems tend to have a negative self identity, decreased trust, and low level of achievement. Delinquency is often associated with low parental support, inappropriate discipline, and family discord. Often, adolescents from communities characterized by poverty, unemployment, and having feelings of alienation from the middle class perform antisocial acts to gain attention and to be popular with their peers. However, most delinquent children do not remain delinquent forever. Change in their peer group, becoming more aware of their social responsibilities, and developing feelings of self worth, limiting positive behavior of the role models, breaking negative attitudes, and overcoming poor self concept help in reduction of delinquent behavior. Another, substance abuse. So, adolescent years are especially vulnerable to smoking, alcohol, drug abuse. Some adolescents take recourse to smoking and drugs as a way of coping with stress. This can interfere with the development of coping skills and responsible decision making. The reason for smoking and drug use could be peer pressure, and the adolescents need to be accepted by the group, or desire to act more like adults, or feel a need to escape the pressure of schoolwork or social activities. The addictive powers of nicotine make it difficult to stop smoking. It has been found that adolescents who are more vulnerable to drugs, alcohol, and nicotine use are impulsive, aggressive, anxious, depressive, and unpredictable, have low self esteem, and low expectation for achievement. Peer pressure and the need to be with their peer group make the adolescent either go along with their demands to experiment with drugs, alcohol, and smoking, or be ridiculed. Drug use, if continued long enough, can lead to physiological dependency, that is, addiction to drugs, alcohol, or nicotine may seriously jeopardize the rest of the adolescent's lives. Positive relationships with peers Positive relationships with parents, siblings, and adults play an important role in preventing drug abuse. In India, a successful anti drug program is the Society for Theatre in Education program in New Delhi. It uses street performances to entertain people between 13 to 25 years of age while teaching them how to say no to drugs. The United Nations International Drug Control Program UNDCP has chosen the program as an example to be adopted by other non governmental organizations in the region. Eating disorders also are there, some problems for adolescents. So, adolescents' obsession with self, living in fantasy world, and peer comparisons lead to certain conditions where they become obsessed with their own bodies. Anorexia nervosa is an eating disorder that involves relentless pursuit of thinness through starvation. It is quite common to see adolescents eliminate certain foods from their diets or to eat slimming foods only. The media also projects thinness as the most desirable image, and copying such fashionable image of thinness leads to anorexia nervosa. Bulimia is another form of an eating disorder in which the individual follows a binge and purge eating pattern. The bulimic goes on an eating binge, then purges by self induced vomiting or using a laxative at times and alternating it with fasting. Anorexia nervosa and bulimia are primarily female disorders, more common in urban families.